Yes, it's Charlie Danger, private detective. Charlie Danger, defender of the Constitution. And now, Charlie Danger, private detective.
The Bohemian Grove turned out to be a sprawling mountain valley estate, secluded away from the rest of the world. We made our way through scenic switchbacks in our chauffeured limousine. After dropping off Jane on the side of the road in her ninja outfit and gear, Holmes and I proceeded to the main gate, and we breezed right through the machine-gun-toting guards and security personnel. Once inside, we got the royal treatment. The place was more like a castle than anything else. It was extremely posh and luxuriant, and I would imagine unbelievably expensive. From the lobby, we were escorted into our suite. We didn't waste any time. There was just too much at stake. Within 20 minutes, Holmes and I were in one of several lounges or smoking rooms where the elite gathered before going to dinner. Holmes found that he was standing at the bar next to none other than Henry Kissinger.
"You are new to the Grove?"
Kissinger asked.
"I am a guest of Professor Mariachi, though I have yet to see him this day."
"I just left him downstairs in the steam room with all of the teenage male prostitutes."
"Oh, really?"
replied Holmes.
"Well, I wouldn't want to intrude upon his little tryst."
"Will you be attending the ritual sacrifice to the owl god Molech and the cremation of Ker ceremonial this evening?"
"You mean an actual satanic ritual in which world leaders, industry heads, government officials, world bankers, and the illuminated elite are all willing participants?"
"Most certainly. And the fun part is that you can be completely naked underneath their robes."
It was at that point that David Rockefeller entered the room and strolled up to the bar.
"What do you think, Henry? A major pandemic?"
"The population again, my friend."
"Biologic or nuclear?"
the wiry little old man snapped.
"It is imperative that we rid the world of the useless eaters."
Rockefeller looked at Holmes.
"Who the hell are you?" "My name is Holmes. I am the guest of Professor Mariachi."
Rockefeller looked Holmes over from head to toe.
"The North American Union is a great idea. Don't you think it's a wonderful idea?" "Brilliant, I'm sure,"
replied Holmes.
"But how do you intend to sell it to the American people?" "What the hell do they know?"
said Rockefeller with a mad grin.
"F*** them, I say. F*** them."
With that, Rockefeller laughed insanely as he and his friend Kissinger strolled arm in arm away from the room. Yours truly wasn't faring any better than Holmes. I had found myself sitting in a booth with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Hillary Clinton.
"I am so overworked from ruining the economy of California,"
Schwarzenegger was saying.
"Why destroy the economy of California?"
"This is America. It's amazing what you can achieve with the backing of the right people. People in very high places."
"Motivation?"
"I am motivated by millions and millions of dollars and power over millions and millions of people. It's hard work, you know. It's nice to get away from it all and have some fun."
Yes? While my Billy Boy is running around the grounds in his birthday suit with all of the teenage sex slaves, I can relax and enjoy the cross-gender thing. I can be openly lesbian.
At that point, the Rothschilds arrived, and both of my booth mates scrambled from the booth to run over and fawn over them like they were gods. A moment later, Holmes slipped into the booth beside me.
These people are not only perverted, they're also quite insane.
Have you located Mariachi?
Yes, but trust me, we don't want to interrupt him at the moment. Suffice it to say, he's definitely here.
I sat back in the plush booth and lit up a smoke.
I wonder how Jane's making out.
Holmes struck a match and puffed his pipe to life.
Hopefully, she's dug in somewhere, and will rendezvous with us in our room after dinner this evening.
Dinner took place in the most decadently opulent dining hall, complete with all the amenities that royalty could ever possibly demand. While many of the world's leaders and elite were seated at a lavish dining table of honor, Holmes and I sat isolated at a small table in the back corner of the room. Armies of servants served up an elegant dinner. Holmes and I ate our meal while listening to speakers like Rockefeller and Rothschild droning on and on about how wonderful the New World Order was going to be.
From what I gather, they intend to systematically disassemble the United States, decimating its economy and bankrupting everyone except themselves. They want global control of everything. They want to micromanage everybody's lives everywhere. This is indeed the most diabolical scheme I have ever encountered.
At that point, Jane Cannery made her presence known from underneath the dining table.
Hey, watch where you guys put your feet.
Jane? What the hell are you doing down there under the table?
I had to get a word to you guys. Right after dinner, you better get yourselves out to the lake for the satanic ritual. Professor Mariachi will be there.
I looked down into those big, beautiful eyes that were looking up at me from under the table.
How did you manage to get underneath the table? Would you been there all along?
Never mind that now.
She's right. I suggest that we make sure we're all fully armed and wired.
We have to get out to the lake for the ritual before someone else tries to stop us.
Don't worry, baby. We'll meet you there in less than an hour.
Since dinner is completed, we shall depart immediately for our room to don our ceremonial robes.
With that, Holmes and I casually made our way back to our room. We were in luck. It was dark outside, and the deep blood-red robes we wore made it easier to blend into the darkness. We made our way by sticking to the shadows, the trees, the woods, and the brush. The ceremonial area by the lake was brightly lit with torches, and there were people dressed in various colored robes dancing around a huge bonfire which burned before a towering statue of the owl god Molech. Holmes and I made our way around to the wooded shadows behind the great idol. Being rigged for recording video and sound, Jane ventured to get as close to the action as she could. We were all in communication through our tiny headset transmitters. Some of the revelers dancing around the bonfire had shed their robes and were frolicking around in the nude. At this point, I would rather not go into a description of what Bill Clinton, Henry Kissinger, and Nancy Pelosi look like naked. Suffice it to say, I'd really like to forget what I saw. It was downright nasty. And then Holmes spotted him. I turned around and looked, and there was Mariachi. He was leading the likely dressed members of the Mariachi Orchestra.
Suddenly, I felt a hand slap me on the back. I hope you boys are having a good time.
It was a robed and highly inebriated Edward Kennedy. His breath smelled like an entire brewery.
You boys feel free to join in right there with everybody else. I have to find somewhere for me to take a leak.
Without another word, Kennedy staggered off into the deeper bushes. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. Holmes and I watched as the world's elite drank heavily, swore profusely, frolicked naked, and fornicated openly.
Begone, dull care. Fire shall have its will of thee. Begone, dull care. And all the winds, make merry with thy ducks. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame. Once again, midsummer sets us free. Ye shall burn me once again. Not with these flames, which hither ye have brought from regions where I reign. Ye fools and priests, I spit upon your fire. Great owl of Bohemia, we thank thee for thy adjuration.
I tapped on the tiny microphone of my communication device before I spoke.
Jane, can you hear me? This is incredible. Are you seeing what I'm seeing?
I got the grand seat. I'm getting it all down on video, but I can't hear what you're saying very well.
I turned up the volume a little.
How's that now? Can you hear me better? Listen. Holmes and I will get what we can from in back of the bird, and then we'll make our way over to the band. That's Mariachi's current location. I repeat, that's where Mariachi's at. Meet us over there.
Sometimes you get so wrapped up in what you're doing that you quit paying attention to what's going on around you, just long enough to get yourself in trouble. I hadn't noticed that the band had stopped playing. The people had stopped dancing, and everybody was looking at me. Apparently, my transmission had been picked up by the PA system and broadcast to the entire crowd. I turned and saw that Holmes was already running away as fast as he could, and so I wasted no time in joining him. Behind me, the satanic ritual had turned into mayhem. I could hear screams and guns going off, and there were several big explosions. I hoped that Jane was faring well back there. I had lost track of Holmes, but in this kind of situation, it's usually every man for himself. Your cover's blown, the bad guys are after you, and you're lost in the woods in the dark. After spending 2 days roaming through the woods, the mountains and valleys, the wind and the rain, I emerged on a side road where I waved down a ride in an Amish buggy. That took me to the nearby Holiday Inn. I thanked the Amish guy and handed him a C-note. What really amazed me was that I found Jane Cannery there. She was sitting on the curb in front of the place, drinking coffee and smoking a fag. She smiled when she saw me.
What took you so long? I was beginning to think you didn't make it.
I'm happy to see that you did, baby. Any sign of Shurelock Homes?
He's inside the crapper. He booked us into some rooms. You look like you've been through the ringer.
Later on, as we sat in Holmes's room thinking about what our next move would be, my mind began to wander. Sometimes you take on a case thinking nothing of it, and you wind up in a river of crap. That's how I was feeling as we sat in Holmes's room there at the Holiday Inn. I found myself thinking about walking along beaches, petting a favorite dog or cat, drinking iced tea on your front porch, or dancing with the woman you love. Then I thought about the dirty rats who've got so much wealth that they could never spend it in a lifetime, or 2, or 3, or 100 lifetimes. The kind of low-down scum that thinks they're royalty and destined to rule over the rest of humanity and turn people's lives into crap. Vulgar, bloated, megalomaniacal scumbags that need to have their asses kicked and thrown into prison. Well, they had done it. They had really pissed me off. Right then and there, I decided I'm not going to take it anymore. Just who in the hell did they think they were? When did God die and leave them in charge?
Well, Holmes, where do we go from here? We must keep that document out of the globalist hands at all costs. And we must also get rid of the traitorous Patriot Act. And we must do away with the Security and Prosperity Partnership and the plans for a North American Union.
And don't forget, we must also do away with the Federal Reserve.
And if I were you, I would most undoubtedly pull out of the United Nations.
Holmes puffed his pipe to life and said through a cloud of tobacco smoke,
I would also shut down the Bohemian Grove and the Bilderberg meetings. I would also shut down the CFR and the Trilateral Commission. Then I would arrest everyone involved and try them for acts of treason against the people of the United States.
Yes! Pull out of the WTO and throw out NAFTA and stop the flow of illegal aliens across our southern borders. Yay!
A criminal investigation of the Bush administration and reinvestigate the events of 9/11.
Hey, what about Obama? He and his globalist cronies just pulled off the biggest financial heist in the history of mankind.
Everyone, please. We must not get carried away. We must concentrate on the situation at hand. I believe we're upon the pathway that may ultimately lead us to justice served.
Holmes was right. First things first. Still, the more I thought about it, the more complex it became.
This thing is too big. We're in over our heads.
I told you that in the beginning.
Look, we need to lay low. They're wise to us, and they'll be looking for us. Now, we got plenty of dough. I say we rent us a car and start heading back east.
If we were successful at eluding the authorities, it would give us time to come up with some sort of plan. It was Holmes's brilliant mentality that came up with an idea. The feds couldn't track or trace us if we didn't appear to be who they thought us to be. If we could disguise our identities, we could move about freely. It could buy us all the time we need. With Holmes's expert help, we all took on disguises. Holmes became the Elephant Man. Jane became Julia Child, and I became Ziggy Stardust. In these disguises, there was no way Uncle Sam would know who we really were. Who else but Holmes could come up with such a stroke of genius? Later on, as we drove down the interstate in our rented Winnebago, everyone had calmed down and chilled out. Things had started looking up. That is, until we got to a little town called Salt Flats in Arizona. That's where we pulled into a truck stop for gas and eats. We fueled up the Winnebago, and then we went inside to the restaurant and got a table. The waitress came over to take our order.
What the hell happened to him?
She asked as she looked in shock at the Elephant Man.
Don't worry about him. He was born that way,
I said as I casually looked at the menu she handed me.
Were you born that way too?
Sure thing, sister. Any more wisecracks?
For a second I thought about slugging her, but I just grunted and buried my face in the menu.
And I know you're from somewhere too.
She said to Julia Child as she handed her a menu.
Let me know what poison you all decide on.
She said with a shake of her head as she walked away.
I say, doesn't that waitress remind you of somebody? Tell me about him.
Half an hour later, the waitress returned with our meals.
I hope you choke on it.
She said as she placed our meals on the table before us.
If you do, don't come crying to me.
Excuse me,
said the Elephant Man.
I wonder, do you have a relative in New York who is also a waitress by trade?
Yeah. What's it to you?
Simply a matter of deductive reasoning. You are a waitress. Your hair and facial features are similar to hers. You speak with a New York accent. Your demeanor is quite similar, and your name tag reveals your name to be Margie.
Look, if you think you're funny, guess again. Any more lip out of you guys, and I'll have you thrown out of here.
Without another word, she abruptly turned and headed back towards the kitchen. The journey back east, except for a number of slight incidents along the way, was actually pretty uneventful. After all, everybody was in disguise. Well, actually, if you want to get technical about it, our disguises were the cause of several slight incidents that occurred along the way. Holmes tried several different disguises. First, it was Mr. Hyde, of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But that didn't work out very well because at the very next restaurant, they threw us out of the place. The next thing he tried was the Incredible Hulk, but that didn't seem to work out either. He experimented with the Hunchback of Notre Dame, the Cowardly Lion from The Wizard of Oz, and the Fat Man from The Maltese Falcon. He tried Jimmy Cagney, Jimmy Durante, and Gabby Hayes, too. Then he tried the Invisible Man. That actually worked out pretty well because we didn't have to pay for his dinner at the next 3 truck stops. I still can't figure out how that happened. The problem with the Invisible Man disguise became evident when Holmes was run over by one of the big rigs while crossing the parking lot. The thing that bothered me about being Ziggy Stardust was that several times there were strange men in the men's room that would come on to me. Most of the time, I would get stares and remarks like, "Hey, baby, you're in the wrong bathroom," or, "Hey, Joe, look at what we got here." I talked Holmes into doing up a different disguise for me. I'd had enough of being Ziggy Stardust. Jane wasn't too happy about her disguise either. Strangely enough, nobody seemed to bother Julia Child. I think it was because she was so homely looking that most people avoided her. Aside from all that, things went rather smoothly. I mean, we had eluded the feds, which was the reason we were all in disguise in the first place. So, in that sense, the disguises were a success. I guess. We decided that the best thing we could do was to head for Washington, D.C. to look up the one politician that we thought we could trust. That was Congressman Ron Paul. When we reached D.C., we pulled the Winnebago into a Motel 6 and got us some rooms. We were all supposed to meet at the Denny's next door to the motel for some eats and to plan our strategy. That's when Holmes, who had transformed himself into the guy with the tongue from Kiss, went and got a copy of the Washington Post. He sat there browsing through it as Jane and I looked at the menu.
My God!
He gasped suddenly.
We seem to have made the newspapers.
Let me take a gander at that.
Sure enough, right there in black and white, the headline read, "Search for Terrorists Continues." The article read, "Homeland Security continues its search for Charlie Danger, Shurelock Homes, and Jane Cannery. The gang is suspected of plotting against the federal government. They are dangerous terrorists bent on terrorist activities for the purpose of creating terror in order to terrify decent American citizens terribly. The DHS, the FBI, CIA, ATF, and the IOU are still searching for Danger, Holmes, and Cannery. It is believed that they are wearing disguises, though authorities are having a hard time keeping up with who is actually disguised as who. Loyal Americans who are still under the illusion that the government has the people's best interests at heart are hereby encouraged to report these terrorists to the government authorities."
Damn it! What in the name of tarnation do we do now, Pa?
exclaimed Jane, who had taken on the disguise of Marjorie Main as Ma Kettle.
Well, now, I reckon we'll just have to keep on keeping on, Ma.
I said. I had taken on the disguise of Percy Kilbride as Pa Kettle, because if you have Ma, you ought to have Pa too. Anyway, that's what Holmes had suggested.
Well, that's all there is to it.
I said in anger as I crumpled the newspaper.
There's nothing left for us to do but take these dirty rats on and give 'em everything we've got.
Holmes looked at me and shook his head.
You may be right, Mr. Danger. Things certainly look bleak, but if you give me some time, I think I may be able to formulate a plan of action.
Yes, you've been listening to Charlie Danger, Private Detective. Tune in next time for the next exciting episode of Charlie Danger, Private Detective.